Hey, aloha, and welcome to Stan, the Energy Man, our special St. Patrick's Day edition of Stan, the Energy Man, here on ThinkTech Hawaii. I'm Stan Osserman from the Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technologies, and we're doing our show on St. Patrick's Day, and it shouldn't be too technically different than any other show you would think, but that's not the case. As I stared into my closet this morning at 5:30 a.m. in the dark with my flashlight, looking for a green-colored shirt to properly celebrate the occasion, I was faced with the dilemma of the green screen. For those of you not familiar with the magic of our studio, we have a solid green background that our computers use to allow the producer to put up any background she would like the nice mountain scenery behind me, so long as I'm not wearing any green. Because if I wear green, the cool background shows up on me. So do you see my problem? So with my sincerest apologies to all my Irish friends, I had to go with a blue-green shirt that I think is not disappearing, at least I hope not. But I also have my HCAT hat, the nice green one. Well, sort of. I started off with my nice green HCAT hat, but the producer said I had to take it off. So anyway, my sincere apologies to my St. Patrick's Day brethren over in Ireland, and I wish I could have had my green shirt on and my green hat, but unfortunately can't do it here. But thanks for letting me share your lunchtime with you again. And we're just going to talk a little bit about just the state of hydrogen. As you know, when I talk to my other guests, I'm kind of a hydrogen junkie. And this morning out at HCAT, we actually did our historic event at HCAT. We had our very first refueling off of our Millennium Reign refueling unit. We refueled a weapons loader that we had built for the Air Force, and we're waiting to deliver it to the Air Force. It has to be certified first to be able to handle ordnance, and it hasn't been certified. So we used our Millennium Reign to refuel the weapons loader, and we actually drove it around a little bit and did some up and down and took some video, and we'll have that in the show probably in about 2 weeks. But lots going on with HCAT. Everybody's been super busy. But I wanted to just talk today a little bit about hydrogen technology, just because we just can't get the information out enough. It seems like everybody I talk to has never heard of hydrogen, doesn't understand the technology, so we're just going to do a quick review today. And the first thing we have is a quick video, again from my friends at Toyota, who I wish I could afford their budget in doing videos, but that's why I use their video. They have a great series of videos out there, and this is my favorite one. And it talks about how easy it is to make hydrogen when you're trying to get rid of other things like methane and greenhouse gases. So we're going to go to this video, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoy watching it. I can't seem to watch it enough.
Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. It's in almost everything, from water to trees to grass. That's what makes hydrogen such an exciting fuel. But the critics have been vocal. Some have even gone so far as to call bullshit. And they're right, but not in the way they think. I'm an engineer, and these are cows. And all of this manure has hydrogen in it. Let's see if we can use that hydrogen to get a car to really run on bullshit. Let's go. So I'm on my way to meet Ron. He's a dairy farmer. He's got a beautiful little family-run dairy and lots of manure, and that's just what I'm looking for. Wow, Ron, look at this.
Yeah, this is the stuff.
So what do you see when you see these piles?
Manure.
When I look at these piles, I see an enormous amount of energy, and I was hoping we could run a little experiment with your help.
Right.
I'd like to see if we can take manure, strip the hydrogen out of it, and use that hydrogen to power a car.
That sounds crazy, but let's do it.
All right, Ron, thank you so much. I'll bring you back for the good part.
Look forward to it.
All right. So now that we have our truckload of manure, we're on our way to the digester, which is basically a big poo lagoon that breaks down our manure and releases some lovely smelling raw biogas. Then we're collecting some purified gas off the other end and taking it to a steam methane reformer. This is where the real magic happens. Using steam and heat, we can strip out the hydrogen, which should then be able to power our vehicle. A moment of truth. want to drive?
I would.
All right.
Well, it started.
Well, I told you it could be done, and here we are.
This is great.
It's great, huh? Did you ever think we'd be sitting here, driving a car on that Commodore?
It seemed like a stretch.
No combustion engine in this car. The hydrogen and the oxygen from the air come together in that fuel cell, and it makes DC electricity.
That's incredible.
And it doesn't even smell. But there's many other ways to get the hydrogen. We just demonstrated one with this process.
We're driving down the road, running on bullshit.
All right, so I'm not trying to sell Toyotas or anything, but I just think that video is so cool because, believe it or not, here in Hawaii, that's one of the ways we're thinking of making some energy, and that is to use what we call anaerobic digesters, like that big, I think the engineer called it Poo Lagoon, but to use waste from hotels, especially on the Big Island, or communities, and take that waste and literally mix it up and get it to make methane. Then take the methane and use it to pull hydrogen from, and also make power for a community or give power back to the hotel. Because a lot of people don't realize this, but if you're concerned about greenhouse gases, methane is like 14 times worse or more than carbon dioxide and the other things we put in the air in terms of greenhouse gases. So literally, the more you can capture that methane and turn it into energy, the better off we are, all the way around, climate and everything. But it's a way of showing that that's just one way of making hydrogen. And hydrogen for transportation, for me, is a really big thing. Because when you think about it, and I really kind of focused on this last week, when you think about it, we've always burned fuel. We burned wood in wood stoves and things back in the Stone Age and early mankind. Then we started burning things like coal because it was more energy dense and could get hotter fires from that. Then we started going into oils, like whale oil for lanterns and things. We're always burning these fossil fuels. Why? Because they're plentiful, they're cheap, they were all over the place. But now we've got so many cars and so much transportation and so much fossil fuel use. But what are we doing with that fossil fuel? We're not using it for something constructive where we're making things from it. We're just burning it. We're burning it so that we get another form of energy, heat out of it to make electricity. And the rest of the carbon and stuff is either going in the air or we're spending a lot of money on after treatment to scrub the air clean so that we don't pollute. So why are we going through all these steps to just waste that fossil fuels that we have that are so valuable and have to last us another millennium to make plastics and other things that we really do need that last us? They're not gone when we burn, like when we burn fuel up, it's just gone. So I'm really bullish on hydrogen, and all of your fossil fuels contain hydrogen. Hydrogen's the energy carrier in all these. So what we want to do is quit burning fossil fuels and start using the hydrogen in those fossil fuels and using the carbon to make other durable goods, carbon fiber for carbon fiber aircraft surfaces and car bodies, high-tech nanocarbon technology for better batteries and even better fuel cells for that matter. So let's start thinking about what we're really doing with our fossil fuels and quit burning them and start using them for what we really should be using them for, which is making durable goods. So one of the ways that we use hydrogen from these fossil fuels, we pull the hydrogen out either by running through an anaerobic digester and steam reforming the hydrogen out, or using an electrolyzer and splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen. We run those in a car through what's called a fuel cell. And a fuel cell is just like another kind of battery. In fact, the components, if you look at the way they're scientifically described, you have cathodes and anodes, and you have partitions in between those cathodes and anodes. And what a fuel cell basically is a self-charging battery. Instead of having to take the battery and put it into an electric circuit and let it build its current back up, its voltage back up, you basically take hydrogen and oxygen and push them into this fuel cell from opposite ends. And when the hydrogen and oxygen try and make water again, the way it's designed is the electrons from the hydrogen actually have to go around the membrane, while the proton from the hydrogen goes through the membrane to get to the other side, and that gives you an electric current. So what you see on the screen right now is actually a fuel cell. That looks like about a 30 kilowatt hydrogenics fuel cell. It's real typical to what we have in our vehicles, almost all of our vehicles. And this fuel cell is 30 kilowatts. So that's 30,000 watts of electricity out of that little tiny box. That's quite a bit of power, 30,000 watts. You figure your average house probably uses 21 to 30 kilowatts hours per day. So this can make constant power enough to do your whole house. I mean, literally, it's way more than you need for your whole house. It produces probably 3 or 4 times what you need for your whole house. It can produce in 1 hour all the power your house needs for the whole day. So this equipment is really basic. All the blue lines are cooling lines, either blowers or pumps that run cooling liquid through the fuel cell. But basically that's all it does, is it takes hydrogen and oxygen, mixes them, and gives you back an electric current. And that current is used to drive motors and charge batteries, and it does some great work for you. Now the cars and the buses are designed differently. This size fuel cell is typically used in a medium-sized truck or bus. And what it does is you can either design the vehicle to be what we call fuel cell dominant, meaning you want a lot of power and you want it to have a lot of get up and go, and so you have the battery there, but you also have the fuel cell feeding the motor at the same time. Or you put the batteries in and have a fairly large battery that runs the motor all the time, and the smaller fuel cell that just keeps charging the battery. So different designs in different vehicles for different purposes, depending on whether you need more power or you need to just charge your batteries over a longer time. So that's the equipment right there, and that gives you a good idea of just the scale of how small, I was going to say how big, but how small a 30 kilowatt fuel cell is. The next image we have is actually on the other end of the scale. I deal mostly with transportation fuel cells, but the next image is actually a stationary fuel cell. It's kind of neat because it's actually, it's in Torrance, California, and it's at the Toyota headquarters, and it's a megawatt scale fuel cell. Now this fuel cell is literally designed just to be used in the summertime, because in California in the summertime, the electric rates go so high because there's so much demand for all the air conditioning and everything that the price of electricity jumps. And Toyota headquarters has realized that they can run this fuel cell instead of paying the electric company for their electricity, and it's actually cheaper. So this is a 1 megawatt scale. And so you've got enough power here. I think Oahu's power requirements are around 900 megawatts to a gigawatt, somewhere in there. So this is like 1/900th of what it takes to run the entire island of Oahu. But it's a good example of how big you can scale a fuel cell up. And it's not uncommon to see a fuel cell that can do a megawatt. There's quite a few companies out there that are putting them together. And there's even some companies putting electrolyzers together. They can make hydrogen fast enough to use in these big fuel cells that are on the megawatt scale for making hydrogen as well. And we saw some when we visited Connecticut the last time we were there on our trip to the East Coast a couple weeks ago. So those are two of the technologies that that we look at, that we use, and I really like people to really understand better. We're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, I'll show you some of the vehicles and some of the dispensing stations that we've also run across.
Hi, I'm Ray Starling, and I am co-host for Hawaii's Wednesday afternoon State of Clean Energy. And with me today is Leslie Cole Brooks, and she's going to tell you what's happening this month with our shows.
Hi everybody, I'm Leslie Cole Brooks, the Executive Director of the Distributed Energy Resources Council, and this month the focus is on distributed energy resources. We just had a great show on smart grid technologies, and the rest of the month we're going to discuss storage, different strategies, microgrids, and then we're going to have live man and woman on the street from Verge. So it's really exciting, very informative, lively, and just worth doing. So see you next Wednesday.
So all this hacking has become a major topic. I'm Andrew, the security guy. Join me on Hibachi Talk and learn a little bit more about it. I have my friend Gordo and my puppet buddy Angus. Check us out on Fridays at 1 o'clock on ThinkTech Hawaii.
Hey, welcome back to my lunch hour. Stan, the Energy Man here on ThinkTech Hawaii. And we're talking about fuel cells and electrolyzers and poo lagoons and how do you make hydrogen in different ways. The nice thing about that megawatt scale electrolyzer is when you think about it, one of the biggest challenges that Hawaiian Electric is going to have here as they take more and more photovoltaic renewables from residential units is they have to have a way of storing that energy. And when you get to the megawatt and gigawatt scale for sure, batteries don't do it. They're way too expensive. Their shelf life is not going to hack it. They're going to have to be replaced so often. You have safety issues when you have that much battery in one location. They're heavy. They're basically hazardous material when you go build them, and you know they're not desirable. But you can store hydrogen in any of a wide range of containers and put it right back in this kind of equipment. Put power right back on your grid, right where you need it. By the way, so you don't have line loss. Right now, HECO generates power in one location and pushes that power all over the island. And really, you could put one of these megawatt scale fuel cells in a community and provide all the power that community needs. And then, by the way, in a disaster, they have the power right there available to them, and they just keep recharging it with their solar arrays during the daytime. So that technology is really good, and it also provides the fuel that we need for our transportation sector. So our next shot is a great piece of work that is over in California, in Berkeley. I was there at a conference, a fuel cell conference, and the city there has these hydrogen fuel cell hybrid electric buses. And just so you understand, it is truly a hybrid drivetrain. It's an electric drivetrain, and instead of having a diesel engine providing a generator that gives electricity to the bus, it's a fuel cell that gives electricity to the bus. Now these buses are comfortable, they're big, and actually when I was talking to some folks about how they like the bus, they said they actually wait for the hydrogen buses because they're so much quieter and they're so much more comfortable because they're not as noisy and smelly as the diesel buses that go by. So there's several communities in California that the municipalities have adopted these kind of buses, and they're very, very popular. We're trying to get some of the tour buses in Hawaii to convert to this technology, and hopefully over the next 4 or 5 years, you'll start to see some of these buses popping up at some of the local tour companies. Some of the advantages are the tour bus companies right now, when they have to stop and pick up passengers and they're sitting, they're not allowed to run their engine. Well, if you're not running your engine in a diesel bus, you're not running your air conditioning. Well, with the fuel cell bus, the hydrogen bus, you can actually keep the fuel cell running all the time because all it kicks out of the exhaust is water vapor, and it's really quiet, doesn't make any noise, so they can run the air conditioner all day long, and it's no big deal. There's no ordinance against running your fuel cell. So you can actually have your passengers all cool and comfortable while you're not moving around, and you don't have to shut off your engine. So there's some real big advantages to this technology aside from just being clean and green. There's some great customer advantages. What I'd like to do now is show a couple of the stations that are out there, just a quick review of some of the different stations and talk a little bit about how they're different. The first one is one in Torrance, California. I visited this station about, I want to say 2 years ago, and it's still running. They sell their hydrogen for about $15 a kilogram, which is about the going rate in California. And that's a little bit expensive compared to gas. It's probably equivalent to about $4.50 a gallon for gas when you take mileage and things like that into consideration. But this station actually gets its hydrogen off of a pipeline that runs right down the middle of the street in front of the station. The pipeline runs between a Linde gas production plant and a refinery down at the other end of the road. And so this hydrogen station basically takes a stream of hydrogen off that pipe and purifies it a little bit, stores it in some tanks, and dispenses it. It's one of the busiest hydrogen stations in California, right there in Torrance. The next one is a station that I saw when I went to, I think this is UC Davis. And this is a station that was one of the first ones to actually offer self-service hydrogen for a price. And it happened while we were there, during the week that we were there, and it was a big deal for the first actual public sale of hydrogen out of a dispenser. Now this station actually has an electrolyzer right behind that wall where the lady's standing. So on the other side of that wall, they just take water and electricity and split water in half and then dispense the hydrogen right on the dispenser there. The next shot is shows you the scalability. This station here is one of the stations that also makes its hydrogen on site, or you can even drive a tube trailer up behind the wall and leave it parked there and just dispense hydrogen from a stored tank behind the wall. But this is the scale of hydrogen station that I see Hawaii picking up a bunch of these when we first start getting into hydrogen. There's some companies that make this size station at about 10 kilograms a day production and some storage. And I think for the first few years, that's all we're going to need here in Hawaii to get the transportation sector going with Toyota Mirais, Honda Clarities, and some Hyundai Tucsons, and maybe some of the other GM and Ford vehicles and other Mercedes vehicles that will start coming out in Hawaii that are already in production in other parts of the world. And so that's just a snapshot of what things could be like. Now, one of the biggest concerns that I'm always faced with when people start asking about hydrogen is safety. And so what I want to do is I want to show a video. It's actually a little bit long, but I'm going to talk through some of the video, and I'm going to let Paul Pontio, one of my good buddies on the Big Island, it's a video of him giving the folks from HCAT, my office, a tour of his laboratory on the Big Island, and he's talking about hydrogen safety. So let's go to the video and listen to Paul for a little bit, and I'm going to add in some color commentary as we go.
Dispel some of the myths about hydrogen, because most people are afraid of hydrogen. Most people think it's the most explosive thing on the planet, and that if you have a small leak in a hydrogen system, then it's just destined to explode and burn the building down.
Okay.
Well, the reality is that since it's the lightest element in the universe,
Okay.
it's 14 times lighter than air. It goes up at 45 miles an hour when it's let loose. That's 66 feet a second. So think about it going 1,001 and it's 6 stories away. It's gone. And because of that, it's very difficult to get a concentration that's flammable at the source of a leak unless you're right at the leak source. And what we do in the classroom is we do it by showing this. So you got a really audible major leak of hydrogen. It's blowing out right now like crazy. And most people would think if there's a spark, it's going to blow up. Well, it'll blow the flame out if I get close enough to it right now. It won't ignite until I get down closer to where it's concentrated enough. But as it's leaking out, it's hitting the ceiling of this building and it's going out that vent. So before I lit it, the hydrogen that had leaked out had already left the building. It's gone. It's moving really, really fast. So the other cool thing about hydrogen is that since there's no carbon in it, it's just purely hydrogen. And it's a little windy in here. But there's no radiant heat. And because of that, you can put your finger about 1/8 inch from the flame and there's no heat. It won't burn. But above right here, it's 500 degrees plus. It's very hot.
So as Paul is demonstrating here, hydrogen is really an interesting gas. And when you read about it in like Wikipedia or any of the things that comment on the science of hydrogen, you'll notice a couple things. He puts his hand really close to the flame there, and he doesn't get burned. And a lot of people think, well, yeah, there's some trick to that. He's got a special technique. No, I put my hand right next to this flame. In fact, I think it's coming up here in the video pretty quickly. And you can see my hand is literally right next to the flame. And it is not hot. You could leave your hand there for 30 seconds, 60 seconds. It is not hot at all. In fact, where Paul's touching the tube there, it's actually cold from the gas rushing through the tube. It's actually sweating a little bit from the cold. The hydrogen, because it is so light, it goes straight up at 45 miles an hour. The heat goes straight up. So if you have a hydrogen fire in a car accident or something, the heat just goes straight up. It doesn't spread, the fuel doesn't spread on the ground and make a big puddle and cause the fuel and the fire to spread laterally. It just burns straight up. So the firefighters, when they're trained on all this stuff, they're pretty amazed because the first thing they do is they'll roll up to an incident, They'll take a thermal imager and look and see if there's any heat coming from the vehicle. That's just one of their clues. Other people say, well, the flame's invisible, Stan, so you could just like walk into this flame if it was hydrogen. And I go, no, it makes a lot of noise. What you can hear when you're listening to this video carefully is especially when Paul has the volume turned way up on the flame, is you can hear the hissing of the hydrogen coming out of the burner. Well, we just, like I mentioned today, had our station fueling a loader. And what I do to demonstrate at our station is we have to vent the hydrogen out of the line after we finish fueling. And when I hit the vent line and take 2,000 PSI and vent it into the air, it'll hurt your ears. I mean, it's pretty loud. So aside from the hydrogen flame going straight up only, and aside from it not radiating any heat, you can put your hand right next to the flame, it's also really loud. If there's a big fire, the fire department's going to know because it's going to be deafeningly loud as that flame is going off, and it's very directional. It's going to be like a blowtorch. If there's nothing in the line of the flame, the blowtorch, then there's nothing to worry about. You let it burn out, and then you're done. And the fire department doesn't even have to hose down the concrete because there's no fuel to hose down. So the safety of hydrogen is actually pretty well documented, and just because of the history of like the Hindenburg and things like that, there's a lot of negative hype on the safety of hydrogen. But most of the firefighters and people that deal with hydrogen, they would much rather deal with hydrogen as a gas than even oxygen. Pure oxygen is much more dangerous than hydrogen. So that's just a little safety wrap up. And we're coming down to the last part of our show here. So I'd like to thank you for sticking with me today and talking a little bit about my favorite subject, hydrogen. And that'll do it for Stan the Energy Man this week. Aloha.
Actually, Stan, before we go, everyone wants to wish you a happy belated birthday and tell us how your birthday was.
I had a great birthday, and the guys in my office are so good. I love working with them. I wish I could take them home. They're great people. So welcome. Thanks for being at Stan the Energy Man and sharing your lunch hour with me today. We'll be back next week with some special guests, some students in the Center for Tomorrow's Leaders, and we'll be talking about a vehicle conversion that they're planning on doing with HCAT and converting a vehicle to run on hydrogen. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks, Erin.